Welcome to the DIY3DTech.com channel.
Welcome back to this episode of DIY3DTech.com. In this episode, we're going to take a look now at accessing the Raspberry Pi running OctoPi distribution and running OctoPrint. So there's a couple different ways you can access the Raspberry Pi right now. So you can look up via your router what IP address it's gotten, or if you have a Bonjour installed, Bonjour, I'll spit that out, which is an Apple-based protocol which typically gets installed if you install, for example, on a Windows box, iTunes or Safari or some other Apple application. It's sort of a mini version of DNS or domain name service registration for your local area network. And if you have that installed, and I definitely recommend it because it's a whole lot nicer than trying to hunt down your IP. You can just use http://octopi.local to access it. Now, there's also a secured version, which, again, I'm not going to worry about, or I would not suggest you worry about being on your own local area network. However, if you're going to get more brave and more experienced and expose this to the internet, you're definitely going to want to use a secure connection. But however, for this, we're just going to use the standard HTTP. And so you input that in your browser, and as you can see up here in my browser, I've put that in and I've gone to it. Now it's going to ask me for my default configuration. Now I do recommend that you do set up at least some sort of default control here on OctoPrint itself. Now we're going to leave on Linux itself, the operating system which is running on the Raspberry Pi. We're going to leave that alone. We're going to leave the default passwords. We're not going to worry about SSHing into it and all that kind of crazy stuff because, again, it's on our local area network, but we will secure this piece. So long story short, we're going to in this, we're going to say my ID in this case is going to be called Joe, and then I'm just going to make up a password. And even if you're counting my keystrokes, I'm going to change this password. It won't be the one for the production version. If you do, even swing by my neighborhood. And so we're going to say keep access control enabled, and boom, we're there. So the screen you're now seeing is provided by OctoPrint. The machine state is offline, so it's not connected to a machine, so we can't control anything. But if we look at the control, we can see the web camera. Remember the web camera we had set up? So we can actually watch the printer. So unfortunately, we're getting a little bit of backlight from the halogen light in the back. However, that's pretty cool. So this is sitting on the other side of the office. You can see me kind of sitting way over here on the far side of the office. So it's about 20-30 feet away. So you can actually see the screen over here. The picture of this that you're seeing is actually right here. So anyways, just kind of cool. In short, we can do time lapses from the video. We can do a terminal control. We can look at the G code. Again, we can look at the control there, and we can look at the temperature. And then we can look at the machine state. So again, this is offline, and we need to now configure the machine. However, to do that, one of the reasons we're not seeing anything, and this is where it does get a little bit confusing, is we're not logged in. So one of the things we do have to do is log in. Even though we set up access control the last time, it did not log us in, and this is where some people get confused, myself included. So let me remember my password that I created because it's not one of my regular ones. And then I'm going to say remember me, and then I'm going to log in. And I'm going to let it save passwords. And oh, now this is another important thing. More than likely when you log in, it's got automatic updates. You should let it update. So I'm going to say go ahead, update now. Are you sure? I'm going to let it proceed. Because one of the things after this updates, it's going to restart itself. Now, I can't, while it's updating, there's not too much I can do. However, now notice since I'm logged in, though, I have connection set up over here. Then I have my serial ports, baud rate, default printer profile, and then the ability to connect. So we'll go ahead and set these up once we're done updating. So I'm going to do a quick video cut, and you're probably not even going to notice it, and we'll be right back and set these up once this update is. Well, welcome back. And so the OctoPrint has updated itself, and we're back at this main screen, and you can see the webcam over here, and again, I'm still in the background. However, the next piece we're going to do is we're going to set up the connection. Now, the particular connection I'm going to set up today is for the Fabricator Mini. So as you can see, the Fabricator Mini here in the picture, and this is what I'm doing this for, because one of the things that I think this would be really interesting to do is set this up and actually print a mount to attach the Raspberry Pi to this, and potentially even get an LCD screen to connect to the OctoPrint. And again, I think I'm going to do several series on the OctoPrint and maybe do an advanced series. However, anyways, let's get to connecting it. So when we click the pull downs, now one of the things I'm going to forewarn you a little bit, some of the pull downs can get funky where they blur into one another. So you see when I click this one, see it looks like this auto is part of it down here. So you have auto, the port, and auto. This is really the field below it, and it can get a little bit confusing what you're clicking on. So typically, if you only have one printer plugged into the OctoPi, you're only going to see one serial port connected, and the serial port is connected by plugging in the Raspberry Pi to the 3D printer. One of the things that I do want to do is set this up because eventually this will probably move into more of my shop area in the future, out of my office area. And what I'm hoping is I can run a couple different printers from this one Raspberry Pi. So we'll see again in the advanced video how that goes. However, for here, we're just going to select this one serial port, and which is the Fabricator Mini. Fabricator Mini's 115/200 for baud rate. This is how fast the Raspberry Pi will talk to the printer if you're not familiar with that. And this will be the default printer, and we'll save the connection settings, and then we're going to tell it to auto connect on startup, and then we're going to say connect. And if magic happens, it should be connected. So it says state connecting. There we go. So the printer is now operational. So we now have the printer set up. You could probably see the bed moving. Let's see. See the Z-axis move? So I'm controlling it down here with the controls. And so we haven't really configured it yet, so I wouldn't get too crazy. However, I just want to show you it actually works. So I'm sitting way over here across the room, and it's working. So we can turn motors off, we can turn the fans on, we can turn the fans off, we can work the extruder, we can retract. Again, control the printer from afar, which is really, really cool. So and through the magic of the webcam, we can actually see what it's doing. So that's pretty cool. However, that's only part of the whole challenge here. So now what we have to do is we need to go into settings, and you see we have this set up again. You might recall from the previous where we got the serial port, we had the baud rate, auto connect, and all of this stuff is temperature interval that it'll pull the temperature, and again you can hover over these and see what each one of them are in communications timeout. I'm not going to get into all these in great detail, so outside of setting these two up here, I just accept the default profiles there. So when we look at the printer profiles, we're going to add a profile in this case, and this is what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this the Fab_Mini, And that's going to be it. Now notice the identifier gets plugged in here and automatically, and then I'm just going to say model again, Fab Mini. We have a rectangular bed. Lower left is the origin, so we're going to accept that. That is correct for the Fabricator Mini. Now we're going to change this to 80 by 80 by 80. Now, you would simply put whatever your specifications are for your build volumes in here. So if you don't have the Fabricator Mini, just put that in here. Now, I do not have a heated bed, so I'm going to uncheck that. And then basically this next piece is which gets a little bit confusing, are the speeds, and this is where you can invert the speeds. Now I'm going to have to look back. So this is running at 6,000. So I need to change for the Fabricator Mini this to 2,000 for the X, Y, and Z. So set this up to 2,000. And Z is actually 800. Extrusion is, so that's still per minute. I need to think about this a second. I'm just gonna leave this at 300 extrusion extraction, because according to the Fabricator Mini instructions, that's 30 millimeters per second, and this is saying 300 millimeters per minute. And so if I just do quick, if I don't do this right, somebody on YouTube will yell at me for sure. So if I have 30 times 60, that equals 1800. So I'm just going to leave the setting at 300 millimeters per minute. I've used it before at this setting, and it seems to work. Nozzle diameter 0.4. That's our nozzle size. We have one extruder, and we're going to confirm. Now, notice that we now have the default profile and we have the Fab Mini profile. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set this to be the default profile. So what we want to do is click the star. And so we now have the star by the Fab Mini profile. And if we want to edit it, we just simply hit the pencil and see it brings that up. I'm just going to confirm it again. If we want to throw it away, we can throw it away. And so we can have multiple profiles. So you can sit up here and add a bunch of printers in here, and then just select one. So on startup though, since we've now selected this as our default and we've set auto connect, it's going to just, when we boot the Raspberry Pi, it's going to just go to the Fab Mini. So here's our temperature presets. We have a graph cutoff of 30 minutes, so the graph will cut off after 30 minutes. We have the set temperatures for ABS and PLA. Since we don't have a heated bed, I'm just going to change these to 0. You could kind of leave these the same, and I go in about roughly 200 on the PLA for the hatch box that I'm using, so I'm just going to save that. Go back in here. So temperatures, that's preset. Terminal filters, we're going to leave the same. G-code scripts for right now, we'll leave the same. We may get this into a future advanced video. Features, we're going to leave all this as it is. Always assume SD card present, repetier, blah, 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 blah. Yep, that's all good. We're going to leave all that the way it is. Stream URL. If you want to stream the camera, now I'll probably get into this in a more advanced video. It does have a URL that you can feed externally to stream the camera video. and then where to get a snapshot. And again, since you're just starting out and this is an introductory video, I'm not going to get into these. However, I think as you can see, there's a ton of stuff that you can get into with OctoPrint. And again, I plan on extending these as a series, kind of week over week a little bit in tackling each one of these and showing you how to do it, going from basic to advanced. So since this is a basic series, you just keep all these the same. Access control, you can set users, which is really cool. So I'm set, here's me as a user, but you could add other folks as users, which is interesting. You can set APIs, application programming interfaces, if you're not familiar with what an API is, so you can have other applications actually talk to OctoPrint, which is really interesting. So you could write an application, say on for iOS or something, that in particular controls the OctoPrint in more detail, so you could write a remote interface. So again, this is a basic class. I'm just kind of explaining some of the various pieces. So OctoPrint server, some of the Linux commands. Again, we won't get into this. And this is just showing you in folders where it's saving it on the SD card. So one of the things in the future video we'll probably get to is disk space threshold, so we can send warning notices when we start filling up space, because as I mentioned at the onset, the files are being saved on the SD card in the Raspberry Pi, and that's why I definitely recommend 8 in probably 16 gig, probably 16 gig minimum for this. And you'll be able to put a lot on 16 gig, but it's just it's getting so cheap. So appearance, you can customize the appearance. We're not going to get into too much of the appearance right now. If you do want to play around with it, you can create somewhat custom appearances, and again, auto detect the language. Again, I have it set detect from browser, which is default, so we're not going to go into too much of that. Just know it's there. Logs, again, it does capture quite a few logs. Now, plugin manager. So these are the plugins that are in there. So we have Cura Engine in there. We have OctoPrint Discovery, which is going to make basically the Bonjour functionality available. So it's going to announce itself on your network. So that's how we found it, because remember, we're up here. We have octopi.local. This plugin, Discovery plugin, is what makes that happen. The plugin manager, the software update. So there's a number of plugins that you can get for this, and again, in future videos we'll go into it. I'm not going to go into it in this one. However, just know it's there, and this is one of the really cool features about OctoPrint, is you can get all kinds of plugins, and this is still pretty early stages. And many thanks to Gina, and I'm not even going to try the last name. However, again, she's done a great job at developing OctoPi and actually OctoPrint. Sorry, OctoPi is the distribution. Software update. We've already updated, so we can see the version we're on. We can see the release notes, where to go get the release notes, or we can actually force it to check for an update. And then we have the Cura engine, which is the slicer. So we'll get into setting up the slicer in the next video segment. So I think this one has ran pretty much long enough. So we now save that one. So we have the build volumes set up, and again, you can see it moves. It's alive. So you can see these guys move. So we have all that set up. So we've done quite a bit on this, and pretty much I think we've reached the goal of this particular video. So hey, if this helped you, give it a thumbs up. Even if it didn't help you, hey, what the heck, give it a thumbs up. I appreciate it, and I'll be Forever grateful. Also, share this. If you're setting up OctoPrint, somebody else, or you think somebody else might be interested in OctoPrint, hey, go ahead, share this video. I want to get enough detail in these to really set them up. Again, a lot of folks have done some great OctoPrint videos out there. I want to get a little bit more in the detail. I think as you're seeing is going through and setting these up, and we'll go from there. All right, we'll see you in the next video.
Please click like below and subscribe to the channel to keep up to date on all of our projects.